Sellery's here. They
I love the babies.
I don't know how they're going to feel about this, though. It's one of those awkward conversations that needs to happen.
It needs to happen.
I should start this with potentially awkward, because depending on the relationship you have with your parents, it might not be awkward at all, and depending on the relationship you have with money. But at some point, you have to discuss finances with your parents. There's so many of us that are in that sandwich generation. Parents are aging, we've got kids, and we have to start planning ahead, and you want to open the door to that conversation.
We do.
Where do you start?
Well,
how do you do
you know, with it's tough stuff. With our teens and our younger kids, we have the sex talk, and it's awkward, and we don't want to have it, but we know we need to have it. With our parents, we need to have the talk about what I call the last chapter. And I say that because, you know, we all know we should have a will, we should have a will, we should have a will, but there's so much more than just the will when it comes to personal finances. So it isn't just preparing for them to pass. They may have a health issue for the last 10, 20, even 30 years of their life that will have a financial implication. And you're right, it's difficult, but the stakes are high. It's so important. So you ready for where you start?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You manage your own expectations.
Okay.
You manage your own expectations about the time. So it's not going to be, for most people, it's not going to be one magical cinematic conversation in which there's this connection and there's tears and it's beautiful. It could be a series of talks while you're driving, like you do with your teenager, right? Like, okay, it could be a series of talks. There could be no emotion. It could be clean as a whistle. It could be drama-filled. There could be yelling. Who knows?
Chairs could go flying.
They really could. And in terms of the detail that you're able to get to in the talk, maybe it's nothing. Maybe the only thing you learn is where the will is stored. But for some relationships, it could be much richer. So that's the first thing. Second thing is talk with your siblings. If you have siblings, a coordinated approach will work, because it may be that one sibling is better placed to have the talk than another, or in another family. Let's do a family meeting. Let's have everybody in there and have the conversation. The tone is important. So the tone isn't, when you die, I want all your money and I want to know how much that is. And I'm going to spend it on stuff you don't approve of. That's how this is going down.
Can you let me know exactly how much I'm getting?
You want to start with love. I love you. I want you to be here for 30 more years, 50 more years. But we know that's not going to be the case. Right? So let's start with love. Let's start with peace of mind. So I want you as the parent to know that this is sorted, and as the kid, I want to know that this is sorted. There's also an opportunity for some levity here. So it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. It could be fun, depending on your parent. You know, my mom's super fun. This was no big deal. We had a yuck about it, and then we weeded the garden. You know,
but you guys probably discuss finances. I think for a lot of parents, it's like that's really exposing them. Because when you go to the detail of what you actually need to talk to them about, as the child, you weren't in on all of that financial stuff growing up. So for them to put it all out there for you, that can be a really big step.
It is an enormous step. And for a parent in which the relationship is already problematic, you know, a lot of times there's something in the relationship that's difficult. It can exacerbate the challenge significantly. So know that. You may want to plant a seed in an email for a parent relationship that's difficult. You might want to do it over multiple conversations. And some people, you just need to bite the bullet and sit down and say, listen, we have to have a tough conversation. We need to know these things. Let's go. It may be that.
It might come down to that.
It might come down to that.
Now, when you decide, okay, you're going to have this conversation, what exactly are you looking for? What are you asking for?
Three things. Because people talk about the will all the time, and we will talk about that. But the two things that precede that are the financial health of your parents and organization. So the financial health is two things. It's net worth and cash flow, just like it is for you, just like it is for me. Except for if you're the kid, you kind of want to know what's going on in broad strokes. So maybe they're not going to share all the numbers, but you want to have a sense for, is this an abundant retirement or is it at scarcity? Because if the call comes that they need home care, they need assisted living, and that could cost, you know, $5,000 a month, does this break the bank? Are we selling the house tomorrow? Or is there hundreds of thousands of dollars there and you don't know? So having that information is really, really important. You want to know how things are looking. From a cash flow standpoint, you kind of want to have a sense for what's coming in and what's going out. Because if they've got a pension and an RSP, they've got all this stuff, maybe they're fine. Maybe they've just got CPP and OAS and they're just getting by. And they might have credit card debt that you don't know about that you want to know about.
Because you can start helping now so that it's not the huge burden
And maybe they're really, really anxious about it and they haven't had an opportunity to talk to you. So on the net worth front, that's assets and liabilities. Some of the assets that they may not have disclosed are accounts receivable.
Okay.
So I had a story recently where the parents had loaned one of their two children $100,000, and that's not written down anywhere. It's important to be written down because if those parents then pass, that's not going to be accounted for in the will. So you should just know that that's an outstanding balance there.
Right.
On the liability front, maybe your parents owe $100,000 to a family member that you want to know about, because if it's not disclosed, something happens and then, you know, all heck breaks loose. So,
and that's why there's fights often when that will comes out or when the money becomes accessible, because people are saying things that weren't being said before.
Yeah, and the net worth and the cash flow are not something that comes up in the will. You might on your will identify the investments that you have, but not necessarily.
Okay.
The second big topic is about organization.
Right.
And what I mean is simply, where is everything?
Yeah.
Because when someone loses a parent, and I'm sure many people in our viewers know this, or maybe people in our audience have had to deal with this, it's sudden and you don't know where anything is.
Yeah.
So if you knew, here's where the passwords are. If you knew, here's where the old tax returns are. It would save you time and stress in a period that is going to be emotional and wrought and all that stuff. Power of attorney is really important. The living will is important. You just want to know, where's the safety deposit box key?
That's right.
Write everything down. Write it down, write it down. So I have a Word document on my computer. It's like all that stuff. I hope I'm not going to need it for 20 years, but I have it. I know where stuff is.
And your mom was never offended by this conversation
My mom's
at all?
never offended by anything. She really
She's like
is that. She's like that person. Like, of course we should talk about that.
That's very cool.